I said, listen, you, something has happened to my daughter. And the police said nothing can be done because of the double jeopardy law. As I'm going up the stairs to go to the bathroom, inside, I'm screaming, please God, don't let it be Julie.
There's no words you could put together to say how proud I am of her.
I hope that in the future, he never ever gets out on the streets to put another family through what he put us through.
Anne's a remarkable person, an ordinary person who's achieved an extraordinary result, really.
King Charles, he said to me, it's a splendid thing that you've done. Not only have you got justice for your daughter, you've made a massive difference to other families for all the years to come. Just pulling up now to the corner of Rydal Avenue, and this is the road that Dunlop was lodging when he murdered my daughter.
News just in. The murder trial of young mother Julie Hogg, whose body was found hidden in her bathroom, has concluded. The man accused of her murder, Billy Dunlop, has been acquitted.
And within weeks of his acquittal, he was in the local pubs bragging that he'd got away with a perfect murder. And I think northern people tend to be a bit more plain speaking. And I've never been sort of in fear of anybody, to be quite honest. And I felt so incensed that he could brag in pubs and things that he'd killed our daughter. And nothing could be done because of an 800-year-old law. It wasn't right. And the only one to put it right was me. So I did. I met Charlie when I was 16, and Charlie was 20 years older and half Chinese. So you're talking early 60s, which, wasn't very popular in a small town in Billingham. I don't think there was any other foreigners lived in Billingham then. We got married and had 3 children fairly quickly. Julie was the second child. She was a very quiet child, actually, quite sullen. She wasn't like a friendly child, to be quite honest, you know. Didn't have like a big circle of friends. And then when she was a teenager, she was a very moody teenager. Very moody. She was like her own person, you know. She wore like flamboyant things, you know, not the usual run-of-the-mill. And of course, she had masses of jet black hair. And of course, then you see the fashion was the curly perm, which sort of like, she had it like out that wide like that, you know. So, yeah, she was like a bit of a fashion icon, really. She met Andrew at a youth club in Billingham. And then they got married when she was just turned 18. They'd only been married a couple of months. And she was pregnant with Kevin. And they moved into the house together. But they were both very young and very immature. Julie was one of them girls who was, though she was married, she was round to our house every day. Every day she was round with Kevin. And then, you know, they decided to split up. It was sad, but not unexpected, because I said they were both very immature. What can you do? You just like want to be supportive, you know. You just want your children to be happy and, you know, be okay. And Andrew, when he moved out, his uncle got him a job down in London. So he went down to London not long after they split up. I went down to the house on the afternoon to pick up Kevin because Julie was due to go to court the next month for a legal separation. And she was working part-time in a pizza shop on the evening. I can picture her now. She had a black skirt on, a peach blouse. the last thing she said to me was, she said, "Don't forget, Mum, to ring me early in the morning. So I'll ring you at 7:30, and I'll be down for 9 o'clock, pick you up." Oh, the next morning, 7:30, I rang her up, got no answer. I just thought she'd overslept. So, 7:45, I kept trying the phone, no answer. So I put Kevin in the car, drove down. When I got to the house, all the curtains were closed, door was locked. It was totally out of character. So I drove to where my son worked to get him out to work. And he came, and the back door, it was like a long glass panel. So he broke that and climbed in. He said, "There's no sign of Julie." So he put the telephone on the window ledge, and I phoned the police. Told them, that we'd come and she wasn't here, and they said, "It's too soon to report somebody missing." They said, "I suggest you go back home and wait for her to phone." So that's what we did do. I got my son and daughter from work and rang round her friends. Nobody had seen her. My husband and son went down to the pizza shop, and one of the staff said that he'd taken her home about 1:30 in the morning, and he'd seen her put the key in the door. So then it really started panicking. We went down to the local police station, which was Billingham, and the sergeant on the desk, she said, "She's probably gone to a nightclub when she's come out to work." I said, "No, she wouldn't do that." I said, "She'd do to go to court." I said, "Something's happened to her." And the policeman said, "Well," he said, "I've been in community relations for quite some time." And he said, "Your daughter's a typical case just to take off." So what do you mean by that? He said, "Well, she had problems in her marriage. She's due to go to court for a separation. She could hitch the lift to London to start a new life." I said, "Listen, you, I don't care how long you've been in community relations. You were dealing with a stranger, and now I'm dealing with my daughter. And as a mother, I'm telling you, something has happened to my daughter." So I drove to Stockton Police Station, and I went to the desk, and I said, "I want to know what's happened to my daughter." So he took me into a room and introduced me to a detective inspector. And he said, "We are taking you seriously." He said, "We will be sending a team of forensic officers into Julie's house tomorrow morning." So anyway, we went in the house and met the head of the forensic team. So I couldn't see any clothing missing apart from what she had on the day before when I'd gone to pick Kevin up. Couldn't see anything else missing. And on the window ledge there was a makeup bag. I said she wouldn't go out the end of the street with no makeup on. I said to them, "Do you suggesting she took off to London?" I said, "There's no way." But I felt at that point that they thought I was like a neurotic mother, and just knew, that something had happened to her because it was just totally out of character. Then the Friday, I got a phone call from the inspector, and he said he couldn't guarantee me that something hasn't happened to my daughter somewhere in the country, but could guarantee me that nothing has happened to her in that house.
Today's headlines. Julie Hogg, a 22-year-old mum of one, has been reported missing from her home in Bellingham. Her family is appealing for information regarding her whereabouts. Authorities believe she may have travelled to London. The search for her continues.
So we get to the end of January. 3 months of not knowing where she was, and Andrew intended to move back in with Kevin. So he was going to go and start and clean the fingerprint dust with his friend. So he put the central heating on. And he rang me up and he said to me, "There's a horrible smell in the bathroom." I thought it'd be the toilet. I said, "It hasn't been used for 3 months." I said, "Put some bleach down and try not to use it while you're there." So on the Monday, with 5th of February, 80 days since I first reported Julie missing, I went down to the house to see if he'd got rid of the smell. When Andrew opened the door, I said, "It's getting worse." So as I'm going up the stairs to go to the bathroom, inside, I'm screaming, "Please God, don't let it be Julie." But outwardly, I was acting as I was in slow motion. I walked up the stairs into the bathroom. The bath panel was like an old hardboard panel. It was always loose at one end. So as I leaned over the bath, my knees went against the panel, and with it being loose, it wafted like that, and the smell come out stronger. And I just bent down and pulled it open. she went to the bath. And within minutes was police cars and vans. And the inspector, being in charge of the missing from home, got out of one of the cars. And I said to him, I told you she hadn't just took off to London, but you wouldn't listen. And that was the sad thing, that she'd laid for 3 months under there. You know, all our appeals in the local paper and local TV, all been in vain. It was a living nightmare that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy.
I was a detective sergeant at the time. Once the remains had been discovered, I was brought in as part of the team, the murder team, to investigate Julie's murder. I was originally assigned to the major incident room. My role was to bring together the various strands of information and evidence and seek to build a credible prosecution case that the CPS could adjudicate on. Fairly soon into that role, it became apparent that the allocated family liaison officer to Anne and Charlie, Julie's mum and dad, wasn't well. That officer was taken off the investigation, and I was asked by the lead investigator, Derek Dobson, if I could pick up that role as well.
News just in. The body of a young woman has been discovered concealed in a home in Billingham. A murder investigation has been launched, and police are forensically examining the scene.
When Julie's remains were discovered and the forensic examination was carried out at the house, and in particular the bathroom area, there was fibres recovered from the blanket that Julie's body had been wrapped in. Those fibres matched fibres from the rugby shirt from Billingham Rugby Football Club. One person stood out as the stronger suspect, stronger person of interest to the investigation, and that was Billy Dunlop. He was a local man. He was an active member and player at Billingham Rugby Club. He had a fairly close circle of friends who all seemed to revolve around the rugby club and the activities that took place there, both on the field and off the field. We learnt that he was an extremely violent individual. He's been a violent individual from his formative years, sexually violent, promiscuous. That's been his bread and butter. Clearly, he was a violent individual. On the night that Julie died, there'd been a social night at the Billingham Football Club where strippers had been performing. Quite a commonplace event there. The individuals that were watching these performances were all hyped up, in drink, perhaps sexually active. Dunlop had gone back to one of his friends' houses next door to Julie, who he knew from the area, and he'd actually said to him, I might pop round Julie's. The friend gave evidence that he didn't actually see him go to Julie's house, but nonetheless that was the evidence that he gave. He was living in lodgings at the time, about 100 yards away from where Julie's house was. And that property was searched after Dunlop had been arrested.
So they searched the house, and in the bedroom where Dunlop was staying, nailed down under the floorboards, was all Julie's keys. And on the key fob, there was 3 fingerprints, all Dunlop's.
Really important piece of evidence, because Julie, on the night that she left work, was taken home by one of the managers of the pizza shop, who actually saw her walk up the drive and put the key in the front door of the house. So we knew that she got into the house and used her own key to get in. But clearly, Dunlop had been with her at some point that night. And ultimately, the CPS decided that there was sufficient evidence to charge him with the murder of Julie Hogg.
Headlines on the hour, and an update on the murder of Julie Hogg, whose body was discovered hidden beneath her bath. Police have now arrested and charged a local man, Billy Dunlop, who will face trial. A date is to be set.
When they'd arrested him and charged him, I wanted to know what had he done to how she died. There's so many unanswered questions. It was just a nightmare, to be quite honest.
I had a dual role, really, both important roles, preparing the prosecution case to the CPS requirements and also supporting Anne and Charlie in a build-up to a Crown Court trial. Well, I felt that it was a relatively strong evidential case. The primary defence at the first trial was based around the fingerprint evidence. It was inferred that the police had planted the keys at Dunlop's lodgings. That was the inference that the defence counsel was seeking to assert to the jury. The defence brought a fingerprint expert who went into the witness box and gave evidence that, yes, Dunlop's fingerprints were on that key fob, but there were also other marks on that fob that had not been identified by the North East Fingerprint Bureau from Durham. And that clearly sowed some seeds of doubt in the jury's mind.
He said he had never seen the key fob, he had never touched it, that somebody had framed him and put his fingerprints there. Now, what jury could possibly believe that? But he did sound very convincing when he was talking, when they were asking him the questions.
I thought we'd done the best investigative job we could have done, and that the circumstantial evidence, such as it was sufficient to convince a jury as to his guilt. Any jury will be told by the trial judge, you must be sure, before you convict, you must be sure of guilt. Anything less than that, not guilty. The jury were clearly undecided, because they didn't say guilty and they didn't say not guilty. They were undecided. So what the split was in the room, I've no idea. But ultimately the trial judge, Mr. Swinton Thomas, took a view that they should be discharged.
Couldn't reach a decision, so the judge dismissed them and ordered a retrial.
The trial of Julie Hogg has concluded, with the jury unable to reach a decision on whether they thought he was innocent or guilty. Everyone involved now faces the prospect of going through it all again.
Words really can't describe the trauma that Anne and Charlie were subjected to. The second trial, it was a really anxious time for Anne and Charlie in particular. It was not anxious, it was traumatic for them. And Anne having to go in the witness box and relive the trauma of finding her daughter's body is just awful. She had to do it again a second time.
It was horrible to go through it all again, because I was suffering bad with post-traumatic stress disorder. So when you get under stress, you get flashbacks and things. So when I was on the witness stand, all I was doing, I was back in the bathroom would smell Julie, and it's just horrible. And of course, you've got a defence barrister asking you questions like, which hand did you put behind the bath panel? Your left hand, your right hand, both hands.
And it became evident that Dunlop was going to go in the witness box and deny the murder again, but they were going to challenge the cause of death. Because Julie's body had been where it was for such a long time, we weren't able to conclusively prove what the cause of death was from a pathological evidential perspective, and that was clearly a difficulty, which the defence sought to exploit at the second trial.
And then at the end of it, the judge, he only gave the jury 5 hours to deliberate. One of the detectives came and said to us, it's not looking very promising, because if they don't come to a unanimous majority, he'll acquit him. And when he called them back in after 5 hours and they couldn't make the mind up, he acquitted him.
News just in. After the jury couldn't reach a verdict in the first murder trial of 22-year-old Julie Hogg, in the subsequent retrial, the jury hasn't reached a unanimous or majority verdict. The accused, Billy Dunlop, has been acquitted and is now a free man.
I couldn't believe it. I just collapsed in the court. I was in such a terrible state, because you're waiting to get some form of justice for Julie. And you knew that the man had killed your daughter. The evidence was overwhelming against him. And he walked off that court a free man. It was just a horrible, horrible time. Terrible.
Words really can't describe the trauma that Anne and Charlie were subjected to. 2 trials and no outcome. And to see the judge acquit Dunlop and for him to walk out of the court a free man, effectively. Well, I remember Anne collapsed and we had to literally carry her out of the court into a side room for her to recover before we were able to bring her back to Teesside. It was a really upsetting time. We were all numb, really, at the outcome, knowing that really this is the end of the road as far as any prosecution for Julie's suspected killer was concerned. But without question, I had no doubt at all that Dunlop would come to the attention of the police again for offences of violence, and that's exactly what happened. I took a call from Dunlop's estranged partner, who was in another part of the country. Dunlop had indicated that he was seeking to find her, to inflict some harm upon her, and she reached out to me in an effort to secure some sort of protective help. And I remember liaising with the police force on the west side of the country in relation to that.
The girl he was living with had got her pregnant, and then they had a fallout, and he was watching her, and he saw her come back to her flat with another man. And he went into the flat and he carried out this vicious attack. He stabbed her several times with a barbecue skewer. He hit the man that hard with a baseball bat. He snapped the bat on the man's face. It
was just in his nature, a violent man, that he would be back in the cells at some date in the future for assaulting somebody else. Subsequently, Dunlop was arrested and he was charged with threats to kill both her and her new partner.
We got a phone call from the police the next morning to say, we've got him. He's charged with attempted murder of 2 people.
And he pleaded guilty to those offences and received a custodial sentence.
So while in prison for that offence, he sent a death threat letter to the woman he tried to kill, saying when he was released, he would do whatever he did to Julie. He confessed in the letter that he'd killed Julie.
It didn't surprise me that he made an admission because he was a bit of a braggart around Billingham at the time. Dunlop had already admitted responsibility for Julie's death, and another team were working on that admission that he'd made to a prison officer to see if that information could be turned into some sort of evidence.
He confessed to a prison officer, and what he didn't know, the police had put a tape recorder on the prison officer. So he had 60 hours, they had 60 hours of tape conversation when he got into great detail how we'd strangled our daughter and concealed her body behind the bath. And she'd risked everything, her job, her life, everything, being with somebody like him. Very grateful. I mean, I don't know her name or anything, but I thank her from the bottom of my heart for, for getting that information from him. I went to see the police, and the police said nothing can be done because of the double jeopardy law. It's a double jeopardy law. I mean, I'd heard it, but I didn't really know the implications of it.
Effectively, double jeopardy meant that if someone had been acquitted by their peers or by a judge, they couldn't be prosecuted for that offence again. That was the basis of it. It's closure for that individual. It's closure, and they can move on with their life. And that's effectively what happened in this particular case when Mr. Justice Hogg acquitted Dunlop formally. It was a formal acquittal, not a jury, not guilty verdict. So the case was closed down, effectively, and Dunlop could move on with his life, and he did. And in fact, I remember he went on national television, or certainly the local television, and was interviewed saying the police should be looking in other directions. It was not me, in similar fashion to the evidence that he gave from the witness box. He knew what the legal situation was, and he knew he couldn't be charged with the murder again.
And then the police came to see us and said, we can't charge him with murder, but we can charge him with perjury.
On the basis that he'd given false evidence at both of the trials. And he pleaded guilty to both counts.
At that time, the maximum for perjury was 7 years. So me and Charlie said, well, if he gets the maximum for both counts, that would be 14 years. The judge only gave him 6 years in total. That's 3 years for each count. Even though he'd lied about a murder, that's all he got. I'll tell you now, I didn't know I could move so fast. I got out my seat in that cart and I ran at the back. I was that far off him. I said, 6 years, I said, I'll see you rot in hell. We were going down to where she lives before she was killed, and that's Grange Avenue in Billingham. I mean, moved in there with such happiness, just got married, she was expecting a baby, and 3 years later, she was dead. Now then.
Hi, all right?
How are you doing, yeah?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
What's really, really hard to contend with in life is I'm 36 years old and I have no physical memory of my mum. So just always that blank canvas.
How do you feel coming outside the house?
Mixed emotions, isn't it, really? 15 years since I've been back here.
At the time, what we told him, I told him that his mum had been in the bath and she'd slipped and hit her head because she didn't have any bath mat and she'd died and she'd gone to heaven. And I said, she's the brightest star in heaven. He didn't seem to have a concept of the 3 months she'd been missing. And he used to look out on the night at the stars and he'd say, that's me mum, the brightest star, that's me mum.
But ultimately, as I was getting older, you know, what a 13-year-old believes to a 3-year-old is completely different. So I started questioning it because of rumours and things that were being said. You always hear the name Dunlop, so it was always something that intrigued me. Why is this name being mentioned?
Kevin said to me a long time before I was told the truth, he said, children at school had said, Mum didn't slip in their bath, that she was murdered. He said, was my mum murdered? And I said to Andrew, he's going to have to be told the truth. He said, yes, she was.
It was really hard. I just can't, you know, looking back, I don't know how my mind didn't combust with such information.
But you knew the reasons why, with both your dad and myself, you know, when you were very small.
Oh, yeah, of course, you can't tell a child that young.
No, you
The
can't.
level of understanding wouldn't have been there
No,
anyway.
it wouldn't.
You know, I used to sit in class, actually, and I'd actually look at the other pupils, my peers, and realise that my life's just not normal. So, OK, yeah, I had a stepmom, but I was always wondering what things would have been like if things were differently. My mum was here. And unfortunately for me, that's my life. And it's been turbulent since I was 13-year-old.
The house hasn't got any happy memories for me to think about what happened in it, you know, so...
Yeah.
So I think we should go. Come on, let's go. Come on. I think it did spur me on a lot more because of Kevin. Give me more inner strength. I wanted justice for our daughter and justice for his mum, you know, that's what I wanted. But it meant changing the double jeopardy law. My solicitor at the time said, you're wasting your time. It will never change. They will never apply law retrospectively and it will never change. And my husband said, Anne, he said, don't put yourself through all that. He said, Anne, it's not going to work. I said, I couldn't stop Dunlop killing Julie. I wish she'd never opened the door to him that night. I couldn't change what had happened to her. But I said, I don't care what anybody says. I am starting this campaign and I am going to get this law changed. I wrote a letter to the Home Secretary, which was Jack Straw, and we got an appointment to go and see him. And I went in his office, in the Home Office, and I had a picture of Dunlop and a picture of Julie. I said, that's my daughter. That's the man who murdered her. I'm not happy with the perjury sentence. What are you going to do about it? It's a common sense thing. If there's been a proven wrongful conviction, I'm the first to agree that person should be freed. But when there's a proven wrongful acquittal such as ours, surely the same principle should apply. Let's get him retried for what he's done. He's killed our daughter. I said, set a precedent with this case. I said, change the double jeopardy law. I wrote to the Law Commission and got a letter back, would we like to go and meet with them? When we got there, it was the full panel. They were absolutely lovely. We just sat around the table and said ours was the most compelling case in the country because we had the confession in court. You know, when I look back, it took over my life.
My gran started the campaign and pretty much your weekends were consumed with either TV interviews or having to go to London to have meetings.
if you weren't doing something like writing to somebody or getting a letter of somebody about it, then you were thinking about it and talking about it. I must have drove the family crackers when I look back, you know.
We clung together, supported each other, but most importantly, you know, getting justice for my mum.
It struck me that the more I thought about Anne's campaign as it was working its way through, it struck me, yeah, she's actually right, really. She's got a point here. And it'll be interesting to see what the law lords make of this point, because prior to that, it had been centuries. I think it was enshrined in Magna Carta back in whenever, that a person should not be tried again by his peers if he'd been acquitted. Because as the campaign was going on and gathering momentum, I became more optimistic, if that's the right word, that, yeah, I think she's got a chance of success as this.
It got through the first debate in Parliament, and then it got through the second, but then it had to go at the House of Lords. Now, the House of Lords is a different kettle of fish. They can bounce it back to Parliament. So, but I had a stroke of luck. We'd gone to a victims' conference in Newcastle, and in that room, about 200 families all had somebody murdered, and quite a few had had acquittals. And Lord Faulkner was the Justice for Victims Minister, and he was a guest speaker. So at the lunch break, he walked past me, my table, and I got up, and I just called him and just said, "Sit there, Lord Faulkner, please." I said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Can you get me to the House of Lords to speak to these people who are going to do this debate on double jeopardy?" He said, "Would you do that?" I said, "I'll give you a week to organise it." Give him his due, he did. He got us to come to the House of Lords. I mean, the room was absolutely massive with all these lords and ladies in.
This is a granny from Billingham who addressed the House of Lords.
And I stood up and I looked round at them all and I thought, you've met lots of families who've had acquittals. Put your point forward. You've got the biggest mouth between all the families. Speak for everybody. I just said, you talk about human rights for the killers. What about the human rights of the victims? They had a right to life. And the only way for my daughter and other murder victims to get justice is to change this law, apply it retrospectively. And that's how I put it across, just basic like that, nothing fancy or anything like that. You get down in yourself at times. And then, I don't know, I just got this inner determination to think, you know, keep on going and keep on going. So I had to wait a few more weeks. And then I got a phone call from the MP. And he said, he sat down. He said, "It's through." Couldn't believe it. We went to collect the white paper because the Home Secretary said we could go and collect it from the Home Office. The press were outside the Home Office when we went to collect it.
I did caution Anne on a few occasions that although she might be successful ultimately in getting the law changed, that it might not be applied to historic cases, including her daughter's case.
It was the applying it retrospectively that I needed to get justice for Julie. And when I took it out of the envelope, the press officer in the Home Office had stuck me a little post-it note and said, "Double jeopardy will apply retrospectively." Can't tell you what it felt like. I was absolutely elated. I mean, I phoned my family first and they said, "You're joking." I said, I'm not joking.
It was a relief, particularly for Anne and Charlie. Massive, massive relief.
News on the hour. The mother of Julie Hogg, whose body was found concealed beneath her bath, has overturned the 800-year-old law on double jeopardy. It means that she can now legally attempt to get the man who was tried and acquitted of her murder back into court to face the murder charge again. The massive implications for her fight for justice means that anyone can now face a retrial for a serious offence they have previously been acquitted of, if compelling new evidence becomes available.
Yeah, I think it's like took over my life in a lot of ways because, you know, I mean, I had other two children who were still alive and you know, I had Kevin to look after, but you're so focused on the blooming campaign. I think you can think of nothing else but, you know, living and breathing it. And I think my other two children worried it would all go pear-shaped, and what would I be like then? And just everything just sometimes it just all got a bit too much. But I just, like, my determination was I wasn't going to stop till I got justice for her. It just took so long. And my husband said to me, Anne, he said, you know, are you sure, you know, you're doing the right thing? I said, I am not stopping now. People think, you know, it was straightforward and you had a team of lawyers behind, but you didn't. You were like a one-man band. The stress of it all laid on my shoulders because I wouldn't give up. Mark, he's been there throughout everything, from when I found Julie right up to now. He's retired now, so he's not coming as an official police officer. He's coming as a friend, and he's been support all the way along the line, and I can call him at any time. He's been a really good friend. When I've had a really down day, and I thought I have to give up on her, he'd say, stay strong, Anne, stay strong. Having somebody like Mark in my corner throughout the years, through the lows, the ups, the downs, the setbacks, steps forwards, but he was always there for me no matter what. So I suppose you could class him as my rock, yeah. A good description, that.
It's been a privilege to be able to stand by Anne and Charlie as they've gone on this roller coaster of a ride, really, because that's what it's been.
To me, you, Mark, I could ring you up and you never changed. I'm not just saying because you sat here. You never changed. I mean, if you had a worry or anything I wanted to ask you, like legally, I could ring him up, and if you didn't know, you'd find out for me.
I felt a responsibility to support Anne and Charlie in the best way I could.
Mark said, we still have a long way to go, you know, because you have to get Dunlop's acquittal quashed first.
Cleveland Police could not afford to get it wrong. We had to get it absolutely bang on from a legal perspective.
I'm Martin Goldman, and I'm the Chief Crown Prosecutor for the CPS in the Northwest. I first became aware of the campaign to change the double jeopardy law, which had resulted in legislation that had been passed the previous year in 2003. And so I knew that there was going to be a job for me to apply to the Court of Appeal to have Billy Dunlop's acquittal overturned.
You could only have one chance at a retrial. You had to have new and compelling evidence.
The CPS had to get it back on. It was actually, dare I say, use the term, a stonewaller of a case, because there was new evidence. They'd admitted it.
We had, in our view, reliable confessions. And in fact, our submission was that if it wasn't this case that would go and qualify for a retrial, then what case would qualify?
And then we had to go to the Court of Appeal in London, and that was May 2006. And when we got there was like these law lords all in like these fur capes and things up on the Court of Appeal, up on the bench at the top.
The defence made a very strong argument for the case not to be given authority to be retried. If a defendant confesses to something without knowing what it is that they're being investigated for, then those confessions will be held inadmissible. And so the argument for Billy Dunlop's representatives was that he wouldn't have confessed had he known what was round the corner.
And there was lots of legal argument by eminent barristers about whether it would be a breach of his human rights and was that bar cleared.
The police and the CPS had said, we won't get a verdict today. They'll make the decision in a couple of weeks' time.
So a little bit of me was a little bit worried. I'm always a little bit cautious when talking to victims and witnesses, the parents of people who've been killed, about the prospects of success.
And then they went out the room, these 5 law lords went out, and we all sat there, and we just had to wait.
Ultimately, the 5-judge panel at the Court of Appeal took them 5 minutes after they listened to the legal argument to make the determination that that bar had been cleared and that he should be tried again with murder.
And he came back in, quashed his acquittal like that, Couldn't believe it. Nobody could. And you got the loo.
I'd missed it. Well, I was walking around. I'd expected the judges to do what they usually do and say, we're going to hand the judgment down in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there was nobody more surprised than me to hear that they came back within literally 5 minutes.
But the Court of Appeal really had very little time for the defence argument, because the Court of Appeal judges basically said, who knows what's around the corner, and he was aware that there was a campaign running. No one knew whether the law would change or not, and so in essence, the Court of Appeal said the confessions are quite reliable.
And I just grabbed hold of the barrister and I said, oh, thank you, thank you. And he said, you don't need to thank us, the whole establishment need to thank you. And I'm looking around, I thought, where's Mark? You know, he missed it.
As soon as the Court of Appeal set aside the acquittal, we had to recharge Billy Dunlop with murder, which we did straight away. And it went back into the criminal justice system as any other murder case would go into the criminal justice system.
I was head of crime then, and I was able to then come back in with some of my team and process the third trial against Dunlop for murder.
Yeah.
We were gearing up for a contested trial, a contested not guilty trial, with witnesses and to go through it all again. And it was a huge relief for everybody when Dunlop pleaded guilty to Julie's murder.
I can't tell you what it felt like. After 17 years of Julie being murdered, to hear Evil Dunlop plead guilty. It was everything to me. I thought, right, you're going to be punished now for the crime you committed.
Breaking news. In the first retrial since the overturning of the 800-year-old double jeopardy law, the accused, Billy Dunlop, has pleaded guilty to the murder of 22-year-old Julie Hogg. He will now face sentencing.
And he got a life sentence with a 17-year tariff before he applied for parole. And I hope that in the future he never ever gets out on the streets to put another family through what he put us through.
The sense of relief for An Ming after the trial was just palpable, achieving her lifetime's work, in essence, to overturn one of the most established legal principles in Western democracy, as well as eventually getting justice for her daughter as the first ever case to be successfully prosecuted under the new double jeopardy law.
I never really understood as a teenager when she was campaigning or the strength, where the strength, the determination come from. Only now that I'm a parent, I see that. And it's very overwhelming because people say, how proud of you are you of your nan? And there's no words what you could put together to say how proud I am of her.
I don't know where she's got the strength from. She's an ordinary person from Billingham. She'd be the first to admit that, would Anne, but she's achieved and contributed to the achievement of an extraordinary result. She's a remarkable person.
I think what Billy Dunlop really did was underestimate the love of a mother for her child and the determination of a mother to see justice for her child.
Once she got the conviction, and we came out the old building, we went round to Snow Hill Police Station and did a press conference. And it was then, I think, that I realised that the enormity of it all. And then not long after that, I got this letter. And I thought, saying I've been awarded an MBE.
What did Prince Charles say to you then when you went down to
Charles, he said, I can remember, he said to me, I know.
King Charles.
Oh, King Charles, yeah. He said to me, he said, it's a splendid thing that you've done. Not only have you got justice for your daughter, you've made a massive difference to other families for all the years to come.
Our case was the first case in British legal history, and that's how it will always be seen. And every time that there's a case where it's relevant to double jeopardy, will mean the world to the families who have been seeking justice. Yeah, that's my nan who campaigned to change that. So it's thanks to her.
Don't give up hope, and if there's something you can do to change things, well, if you've got the strength, go on, go for it. You never know what you can do till you try. We're at the crematorium now, where Julie's bench is. We've got the bench for Kevin. He wanted somewhere to go to for his mum.
Having my nan, who was instrumental in changing the law, that's something that will be forever a legacy with my family. But the grief has to end with me. I don't want my son or any further of my family to be subject to the mind games that Dunlop plays, the heartache that he has caused my family.
Anne is an ordinary person who's achieved the extraordinary.
And I know that one day when I die, she'll be waiting for me. I know she will. And that's when it'll be all worth the while when she says, "Well done, our mum."
Ja, men that's how. Nej, när som du är där med Anne förlåt. Nej, men det är bara. Vi vet det kol. Men det är kollen så bra alla. Nej. هذا النمبر في الثالث جنيت بس سوأنا نسأل نروي ومش نلفقش تشنتشلوش مش ده سنة صح أنا مش مرق مش مسمز عشان نبوش كاب سنين سنة نصح كثير وين ما أحسب سنة من دماء حابب نوش مش مازلنا نقاش من نفسنا مازلنا هاجمرس ومخلصن عاد يلقب يلقسولني بدبنا ونحبت نجس نوزينا فحابد فوجني اللازر سنانو بسول سواز والنحبلو نحسدون يلزم النحب حابد مرس حابد سنزاس بكو نشومول سنزوازن كاب زوائل لوار بدسي بس هذا بنمش نقص فاق استشتيك لو بس تسراج ليش نسينا ما اسم مستياق وتنشيل وش يمكن إنك هذا سيلو بس نمسيلفن أول سنين نسراق دوش دس هذا وش ندو شون دس وش نوقت شنو يعني وش نوقت بفتش بس ساس الناس ناس ما اسمنا ما قلبت وش سيلف بقول بتنوتنا وحنا بس ناس سيلبس الناس هاش اللي يحطوا في ناس بينا ننو من نو فاهم مو هنا قيستي بس فاس نفس إن هاش ستيف بد ما تنامس ننزون أنا يستي بود سنرف نوع من إن ومفشتاش نصهم أكبر هو يستي وبصدر نو فسرف اليوم مو قابو بيشتاج سلسل نسمينا مصنوع نو سويس لسن لي هنسوش نمكتوب بدوني ومدوش سيال بدنوف أنا أشتغل نو في لاس تطلب بيوس يلويش ناس هون تدسي الناس مالك من أطور بيوس طلنا حصل والله يا زوج هاي قبل ما هي هنا وش ما منك استقام نص ما وستفورش ناس استقراح كسماء الأشتوي استقال زواج زول قصن أكلا سواء هذا تلقنا ما استفورش كنا نبحكوا بس هسنا إنه فناش بحكي أو سنوك أو استبهلس وجش ناسجنا هسنا وإن أكبر نعرف بس فاهن إنه أمس كنا ذوق أوريكي فرقنا عنا في مواجبا بس فاش ديني راسنا من إلى يمين رست ما يقفوش بس شو بس نصلت سؤال بشديه من ناس إكس قلب لايش وأنا أشتيه من قلب إن فيه نفش استيه من مسنا نكوز وشنا نشير فصل كيلا في نمس كنا داخل شوش تولوش تسكي نبه وكيف سنوين استفاين سواء سنوات نوا وصل بس الفنجان نزنو لسنوات نويوس نزنو لنوات باش نملك الخمسي سنوات فومينا سينو وجنا مسنا كوي بوني مسنا يبقى بس ندوشتي نفسي أنا بس ناقص بس يبنو بس يلصق يوزني فوق هواش تميرة فوق بس سكت كانوا رندو بس ناس سوي فوستل بس ناس يدنوني نبحث المرزو شيء يفرق سواء مرزو شيرام زو شو سوى سلاك من نفسه وش سوي لوش هواش تميرة مغيرة فوق ما استو هذا سواء هذا سنسوه مثل ماسنا نذاكو من جفتوش ماسنا نوم الوقت مش نعمل منوز يس نفس السوش نفسي رام أغنن ما نلت مبفتوي ماسنا وجن عسنا مش يلي رنقني عن شفر بيضا وشي السني أديال داو بلشت يلاشتو ما بلايك سم شفر ما هي سنة ساخنة قال باش في الصمدة شاخنة قلام ذن الروشوي سقنونش نيوب مالف يلا ويش لوين نورك يزوش يزلو ميرف هاشناني يستلو ميرف بزوشني يستزوشني من سنرف الخس كيف كلفة ندي أنا سنات ياخي شكل نرف ينزوش ما سنزوش نلص ياخي لش خناش ياخي يزوش سناش نكسب سويلوش يلتقي خلاف مجلوش يرفضنا سيرام أقل لأن ما يلعب مسبل سنرفض هذه الناس ما يلعب من وحصلات سنة النوري بخبيرة سنصواني نقوم ما شوف سياس كسيلة نخاش ديوس سيان عشتان هذا رئيس نفس سوي عشتنا يس كس وانا بالعشتنا ما سيس ناس بيامزو سيارو ستيرو بس نو نوينا ستيارو نسوي الله ريج نوشيان مسكين مش بخون فن هاشتاج نوازل كتير رسميات نسبوه كلار بخيرة سنسني بوس لفها مازن سناش ياوكي بس يزنوب بينا فريفني بس أصني بنتن يبتوا فمازن لكي يبسن القام ببيبسنس وأبيه نظامي مازن هاشتا مكفاف بذوي بنا كتير نقدر نطبخ بالقول النسوي Look, as if it's human in them.
Is toch geen ibza. Wallah die Adam ma versuch genam. Der ist nichts. Mir sagt man nicht noch hab's wie auf. Gach hier ist da mal ich will aussterben. Nicht hast du.
Has hard naam te stemmen. Nicht dolls op alles dit. Store hier zit sinne. Wijn val daar vanocht. Hoe is het waan minuten? Mocht het zijn of zien maar verdoos. Snufft met samen den wie zo lief is het nog een wie van oren. Nooit wie in niet net best die les teams des ik laat niet.
Hier ozer. Hier een doos en de wies zo. Zo wil doen. Zo hoe bekwamen we snap.
Surf die over heel maar verder nog met steers en dat was tegen van niet stoei van de ja.
ما يدور واحد استدعى مقيس وونز
يلو شيء بنا نوش نقتل نميرس لاسن مرثاب أوكساس ونوك مازو ليش باش نبغى نستخدم نوش دي مخني صار نسيح من هاش نامس أحسن بس وين سل دسها